Okay. So first thing, we have our doohickey paper due Monday.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
So we got everything. We like decided on who was doing what, but we have one more section, I think, that we didn't really have assigned.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. We have the 3 issues, and then assigned. And then I can do the section 3, the
detailed.
pros, con. Yeah, the details of what the main issue is, and then also, of course, that first section just kind of summarizes what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. I
So it's
loaded
like the same-
first 200. I uploaded the first 200 words of what I've got so far
Mhm.
into the Google document. I didn't want to get too far without like talking to everybody since we don't have like a hard outline.
Yeah. Is it the
So-
same like length and everything as the last paper?
Yeah, so I actually did the hard math.
Mhm.
If each one of us writes approximately 875 words, we'll have 3,500 words.
Nice.
Sweet.
Okay.
Perfect.
So if you guys have word count open or you're typing it up in Word or whatever, 875 or more is your golden number.
Nice.
Okay.
Thanks, man, for doing that.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, and if everyone's trying to get that done by
Yeah.
Saturday night sometime
Okay.
late Saturday night, and then or early Sunday morning. Just not like Sunday at like 8
Yeah.
p.m.
Right.
I was hoping to have mine done by tomorrow afternoon.
Perfect.
So
All right.
yeah. And I was thinking like if we all like touched on how our different points will improve the motivation.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I think
that's what I was going to talk about a lot for the main problem issue is motivation. I think we've talked about it can cause a lot of these things to problems to happen.
Sure. Okay.
For sure. So yeah, I'll just keep writing on my 4 points that I have there, unless you guys think that there's something different that needs to go into job hours and compensation.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay. So is that everything we really need to go over for that, or?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we'll go on to the discussion. So this discussion is mostly talking about, well, the whole thing is talking about the Alcoa thing we were learning about and that case study. So to start off, did everyone get to the point in the reading where it was talking about Ned Stepanek or something? I think that's his name. And it was talking about how he needed to be fired because he directed like an electrician to like repair something, but it was like way too close to the work line, and it was like in a congested area.
Yeah.
And so the worker had like fallen. Okay. So basically, we just need to discuss that. And to start off, like imagine you're in that meeting. What position would you advocate in that meeting? So would you be for firing him, or do you think that he deserves another chance? We'll just start with that.
I mean, from what I understood from the situation is that he had been given a lot of warnings. He had been followed up with. He had a young family and stuff, which kind of sucks, but like, you know, they were trying to emphasize the importance of safety, and they even said like this isn't an easy decision, but this is something that he hasn't really gotten down. So I would probably go with the firing, just because they have gone through those warnings. So.
Yeah.
That's just me though.
I would be interested to see the detail of those warnings.
That's what I was wondering too.
Yeah.
Because if it was just like, hey, make sure that your guys are being safe. If they're counting that as a warning, I mean, yes, that can be a type of warning, like a verbal given, but unless it's like official written,
Well,
I don't know
it
that.
says this is the third incident like that this year, and so I'm assuming they would have like an official. They'd have to have an official thing with the supervisors each time an incident like that happened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that it would be enough, especially he says even between those several times he's kind of warned them. So that's just me.
I personally, I think he should be at least removed from his position of a supervisor.
Yeah.
Possibly
That's a good idea.
go down to one of the, forgetting the flow chart, what was the one right under it, into being just a line operator or the line supervisor. And he should have to take the training course. I think they said they were thinking about rolling out a safety training course to make them all safety observers or whatever. But I don't know if his warnings included at all, like retraining him in safety.
Yeah.
Because if they haven't, then I think they definitely should do that. But
So
if they have done that for all of them, if they've like told him in his mornings, been like, hey, look, and explain the stuff like in detail of what he's been doing wrong and everything, then he should probably get fired.
Right.
But if it was more just like kind
Yeah.
of like what Matt was saying, like, hey, don't do it, then I think he should just kind of get demoted and then retrained.
Yeah, I was kind of in that same boat. Like, what were the other incidences? Like, I can understand if there were like 3 others like that in this last year. Okay, yeah, that raises a red flag. But how were they handled?
Yeah.
Obviously they were recorded because it's a safety issue. People were hurt. They've got to make sure that people are being safe. But really, how severely were those instances taken?
Yeah.
So do you think like the whole situation was Stepnick's fault, or do you think that he isn't completely to blame for the whole thing?
I mean, I think he's still to blame for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, even with, maybe not with adequate training, at the same time, if he's done this before, they tell him don't.
Yeah.
He's still at fault. He did it. He messed up. But luckily, he could learn from it.
I think it's interesting that Matt brought up like how serious they were dealing with it, because I feel like maybe that because this was in 1991 it happened, and this was after that incident with the guy getting hit by the tractor, and after that they had taken so much time and money put into the company to work on like safety and make sure everyone is following all the rules and making sure that they're not just being on their best behavior when like they're being observed. So I think that's also something that we could take into account. So what are like some of the biggest issues for this this plant at Mission Valley?
Like some of the biggest safety hazards?
Yeah, like, what do you think is like the biggest issue with the company when it comes to safety?
I think just it's a factory. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna be cluttered, and not only is it gonna be cluttered with a lot of stuff, but there's gonna be everything's hot and running, people moving. I think it's hard to control everything.
Yeah.
And they say that in the readings, like it's like a whole city there.
Yeah.
Like, there's
it's
so much to like control and figure out, like David said. So
well, and even when it's going through how she's like driving up, she crests the hill and then there's like the entire plant out in front of her. And she looked over, and the guy next to her, and she describes what he's wearing and what department he's in and all this stuff because of what he's wearing, kind of a thing. So I mean, yeah, I think that it would be definitely hard to keep things under wraps as far as safety goes, and the fact that they do so well with the industry standard being so high, it's not like they're not doing a bad job. It's just, or that they are doing a bad job. It's just that they have a goal and they want to meet it. So
yeah,
and it is difficult to try and like control everything. I mean, I think I worked for a little bit in one of the potato factories in Idaho. Yeah, and so like I've been in those factories, and then my father-in-law does rock manufacturing and asphalt manufacturing and stuff, and so like there's a lot of just procedures and safety protocols that are in place, but it's still like it's hard to, even if they're in place, it's hard to make sure everyone's following them.
Yeah,
is the thing. Like it is.
I think it's really hard too when people work for the company for a while because they just go through the motions and they want to work quickly and they want to be productive and just get through their workday. And I think that's a really big problem with people because that can create a lot of problems.
Well, yeah, and then they get complacent too. Like they've been doing this, like a lot of the people they interviewed or they talked about, I've been doing this for 15 years, we got to be tough. We got to just tough through this or whatever,
Yeah.
So
their
like
personality regarding it. Yeah.
Exactly. So like there's not necessarily a persona of safety in the factory at this point in time. It's a tough guy mentality. Well, people get hurt, we move on. It's a tough job to be working on or whatever. So
okay, so does everyone have the case study pulled up?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
I need to like divide all of you guys into groups. So Eric, you'll take 1, and then we'll give Matt group 2, and then David group 3. And so for group 1, you need to compare exhibits 3 and 7 to answer the question, when safety improves, does productivity decrease? And so you need to look at the data and divide the total hours number for each period by the works total for the same period to figure out like how many hours it takes to produce 1 ton of aluminum. Okay. And then after that, just like compare those numbers with the average safety incidents in exhibit 7. And it says the lower the number of safety incidents is the better. If both numbers go down, that's good. If either number is going up, that's bad. And then afterwards, everyone's going to explain the relationships between safety and productivity and just your findings. And so Matt, you're going to look at exhibit 2 and find out which injury numbers are improving or going down and which are not going up. And you're going to want to categorize the types of injuries that are improving compared with the types that aren't. And then David, you'll look at exhibit 6, and then you just go through the list of sample injuries and just look for the common themes and causes. And then from there, you'll just figure out what can you learn about the safety from the list, and then explain your findings.
Cool.
It says to give you guys 10 minutes, but just let me know when you're done.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Everyone good?
Sweet. Yep.
Okay. So we'll start with Eric. So
Okay.
what did you find with your?
So I think I did it right.
Okay. If not, it's fine.
Well, I did Excel, so I did total hours divided by the works total. And so each year as it progressed, the number got shorter and shorter, smaller and smaller. If I can, how do I switch this over? Okay. Do you guys, is that too small or can you see that?
Oh, I can see it.
We can see it.
Yeah.
Like, right. Okay, that's going off. The works total, and then you can see like the 39 right there. It just goes smaller, and then the averages for Exhibit 7 are below. And as you can see, it gets smaller and smaller as the year progresses. So, like it said, if it gets smaller, it's doing better.
Right. Okay. That was pretty straightforward. So you don't really need to explain the safety and productivity. You're good. Okay. So Matt, what did you find for yours?
So mine is the process and flow.
Okay.
So it goes through everything, starting with the ingredients, how they're smelted down. I guess you can't call it melting because you're actually mixing things together, the smelting pot. And I think that they do a really good job. There's obvious safety steps there with carbon lining and insulation, making sure that, there's a siphon that goes down into the smelting pot and then directly into a crucible so that they can just cast. So the biggest safety issue on that process, I would say, is probably right where you're getting it from the crucible to the caster. Somebody's got to pour that. That can be a safety hazard. And then we get the ingots. They go through an alloy furnace and cast. I don't know. Really, that's pretty straightforward. It's going to go through on a belt and come out hot. So whoever grabs it's got to be careful. And then from there onto a hot meal, through everything, as far as rollers, shears. There's a lot of safety issues that can go on there. Just because there is somebody that has to be sitting there watching as the machines are working to make sure everything's going correctly. And if they accidentally turn too fast or a piece of their clothes get caught in the rollers or something like that, can cause safety issues there. From there, it goes into either a plate or a sheet line. And really, I think that's pretty straightforward process. Again, kind of like the hot mill. They're rolled and cooled and then cut. So, I mean, a lot of different moving parts, a lot of different areas where somebody can get hurt. But I think that they've done a pretty okay job taking safety precautions, just from what I know of the process, making sure that things are, I mean, every table has a border or a fence around it. Every furnace has a door. Yeah.
All right.
Nice.
I don't know.
Okay. And then David, do you want to go ahead and explain yours?
Yep. So I had a list of medical cases that happened, accidents that occurred, what happened. Most of them primarily happened due to people slipping, losing their footing, falling. And most of them were either getting burned from it with second-degree burns because they are, dealing with extremely hot equipment, or a cut to their face or arm because they fall and hit the piece of machinery. And so I was also supposed to talk about what we can learn about safety from this list is that, although they have all these precautions in place, if you reach a little too far or let your arm drop a tiny little bit, even if you follow the rules precisely, and we're making sure you tagged out or any of that, you're still going to burn yourself. So you can do as much as you can, but some injuries you really can't avoid too much. Of course, you can avoid some slipping by putting more traction control stuff down and having better work boots. But for the most part, most injuries, even with all precautions, they're still going to happen. They're beyond your control.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so just from everyone's findings, are like any of you surprised that like as safety improves, it's like also productivity improves? Like, why do you think that like productivity, like do you think that productivity would typically go down if safety were to increase?
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in the case they're like, hey, look, we put these governors on our forklifts and productivity went up even though they could only go 4 miles an hour.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, and it's kind of a crazy concept, but when you actually think about the details and in the long run, if you're going to be, people are safe, then they're going to be able to do their job more effectively and things like that. So,
yeah.
Well, I think even like it said with the forklift example, going back to that, they put the restrictors on, speed restrictors, even though they were moving slower, the forklifts weren't breaking down as much. They were lasting longer. They were able to get more use out of them. And, by doing that, you're going to produce efficiency because you're going to be able to have more capacity with them, the bottleneck type situation.
Right.
Really goes. So
we kind of touched on it, but so a lot of it talks about how like the biggest problem with Mission Valley is like typically the people. And so most of like the injuries and mistakes are obviously made by people. So I think that's also something really big to look at when looking at the productivity going up as well as safety, because they have to abide by those standards and follow them. And if they do so, then obviously productivity will go up because they're not just doing things their own way because they have to follow a standard. And so which type of problem do you think is like the easiest one to solve? The ones that are expensive or the ones that involve people's behaviors?
Sometimes that's kind of a trick question because
it depends.
Well, a lot of times a behavioral problem can cost the company a lot of money.
Yeah.
And can be very expensive.
Just go get new employees, fire everyone.
Fire everybody, start from the ground
clean
up.
House.
Just clean house. Find people who have the right mindset.
Yeah. So really, it depends, I think. Because while there was a very expensive safety overhaul on the company, I feel like it was a little bit easier for them to. It also changed the behavior of people. They marked out their roadways. They made sure that things were marked out for walking pathways. What areas needed hard hats, things like that. So I really think that while it was kind of expensive, I think that it changed behavior and it was able to help that as well. So I don't know.
I think a lot about how when Matthew was talking about like it depends on like if it's expensive or not. With Stepanik, I think a lot about how sometimes it is cheaper to just keep on like an old member of a team rather than hiring a new one and going through all the training and stuff like that. But in the long run, like in that situation, it's probably just better off to fire that member and hire someone new that will follow the standards and rules.
Yeah. I think you need to tell me, this is how we're doing it now, and you either do it that way or sorry, you can go work somewhere else.
Yeah. what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that Mission Valley is like up against?
Well, I think kind of what we talked about, the people are kind of in their mindset, with the supervisors on the other mindset of like, we have to make sure our safety incidents are down. So I think it's just kind of a conflict of interest, and maybe the people are just like, yes, we get it, but we also have to act tough and things like that. So just the pride of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Pride is the ultimate downfall.
Oh, yeah.
So what has Mission Valley done in the past to like improve their safety records so that they have like few serious injuries like compared to other similar companies?
I think we already kind of touched on this too, or I did with the massive safety overhaul that they did,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that they're probably going to be doing a lot more of those if they're going to try and get down to a 0 fatality or 0%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal, especially with this particular industry.
Mm-hmm. So we kind of already talked about like the specifics that they've done, like with like investing so much, and like, do you think by doing more of those things that's going to help them move towards their goal fast enough, or do you think like regardless that they're not going to be able to like reach that goal?
I don't think they'll be able to. I mean, there's no way they're going to hit 0.
Mm-hmm.
No industry can have 0. Maybe you'll hit 0 1 year, but the next year you're not going to be at 0 again. That's just the way things work.
Well, especially with their industry.
Yeah, with that industry, that's going to happen. Yeah,
well, I wouldn't even say a year. I'd say maybe a quarter. You'd be lucky to get away with it. I mean, even where I'm at with computers, people slip and fall in the hall on the wet floor. Like you can't. There's no avoiding the fact that some people just don't read a sign or do something that's stupid one day, or maybe they didn't get enough sleep.
And that's a good point, because they could be doing all that they need to as a company, but maybe people are just not paying attention, or they are klutz and something happens, and so I think it just depends.
Yeah, and that kind of moves on to like the next question. So it's like asking about like how do you convince people to like behave differently, or like how do you motivate them to want to be safer?
With jackets, you get them something, incentives. That's what motivates people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
I like the videos that we'd seen. Is it this class? I think so. Like, I don't remember. They all merged together. I've got so much going on right now. But just it's got to be this class. The motivational videos that we watched. And how like the bionicle process, hey, we're gonna destroy this, but they're obviously gonna do more if you're not doing it like right in front of them, kind of thing. But yeah, the incentives, maybe doing a secret safety Santa or something like that, where you can put their name. You see somebody being extra precautious about the process they have that one day, because one of the things that they had brought up was, they're watching when they're being super safe when we're around, kind of a thing. But when you start getting recognized by other employees for being safe and rewarded for it, then people tend to be safer all the time.
Yeah.
So on the flip side of that, so when I worked in the potato factory, we were required every month to submit 3 write-ups of unsafe practices that we witnessed in the factory by name, and put by name who it was and submit to the supervisors. You were required to do 3 a month. It was a very great motivator to make sure you were doing your job. Let me tell you.
That's funny.
Because at the end of the month, they then pull
down on you.
aside, and they come down on you. And then they come down on everyone. They're like, there's this many instances of this and that, and this isn't happening. And you're like, oh, dang.
I only did it once.
Yeah. So, yeah, and
Well, it
and
goes
you
back
had to. You
Yeah.
had to find three with the thing. You had to watch.
Wow.
So and it was the whole observer thing as well. You had to be watching for people doing not safe things, and so.
And I really just think that it really kind of depends on what type of motivation you want. Like with your particular situation, David, your motivator was, I got to be safe because if I'm not, somebody's gonna catch it, and I'm gonna get in trouble for it, and then everybody else is gonna get in trouble for it. But I mean, if we're gonna go on the positive route, yeah, I mean, let's get people jackets, let's invest in the people, kind of thing. And really, with this, I almost would say that the hey, you're required to find 3 things that somebody didn't do safely this month would be better for this factory, just because of the mentality and the personality of it.
Yeah. So the next kind of discussion, it kind of calls everyone out, but so like is asking like whether you follow like these safety procedures, and like if you don't, so like do you, or where is it? Do you always wear seatbelts or avoid like texting in dangerous places? Do you cross at crosswalks? Do you use a ladder instead of a chair? Do you drive the speed limit? Like, are there any like situations where sometimes you just like don't follow that? And like why?
I never obeyed the speed limit.
Right? Yeah.
I'll just start it off there. Last night, from Provo to Salt Lake, I had to go from Center Street, Provo to LDSBC. I had 45 minutes, and I made it in 30.
Dang. Dang.
And that's in rush hour traffic.
I just always wait until someone's going like 90, and then I kind of trail behind them.
Right.
I did that on the way home. There were so many cops out. There's this little white Toyota Yaris that was going like 110, and I was going 90. And he got tagged. He got tagged 2 miles down the road. I was pulled over. I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I was not going that fast.
That's what you do.
I feel like my biggest problem is, one of the questions was using a chair instead of a ladder. Because that's usually I think in school. I don't have a ladder. So just pull up a chair and step on it.
I probably don't follow these at all.
Right.
All the time. But
yeah.
I try my best.
Yeah.
Right.
I personally, the whole texting and stuff, and I mean, I hate my phone. So, like, I hate being attached to the world in that way. So I don't hardly use my phone at all unless I absolutely have to. I don't know.
So what would like make you want to change that behavior? Like what would get you to change it?
I've already had speeding tickets and
I
I still haven't changed that behavior.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe more awareness of it and maybe the issues that are going on, but I'd probably say.
Well, and last night, like I said, there's that Yaris that I was following, but I mean, within maybe a 10-mile stretch of I-15 last night, there was 7 different cops with lights on and having pulled people over.
Whoa.
And it caused me to slow down. Like, just actively seeing that there is an enforcement for the rule tends to make sure that people obey that rule a little bit more, I guess.
Okay, so we're like nearing the end of this discussion. So we kind of talked about this. So like what in like Linda's discussion plan, it talks about like what's going to help the company get to the goals. Which ones do you think like won't really help the company like not reach their goals, and like what's missing from the list, do you think?
Is there like an outline of her specific plans in the?
Yeah, there's a list on the reading.
Do you know what page?
Let me see.
Isn't it like closer to the bottom?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it the 8-step plan thing?
Yeah, I think it's in the middle. Because it's the 1992 plan.
Okay, I'm seeing Exhibit 11.
Oh, you can go
21.
Exhibit 11, yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking at.
anxiety 11.
So we're just figuring out what works best or what wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I think the safety recognition program will work well.
Mhm.
I think the
training for the supervisors and lead operators would be good. I mean, if they're not being trained and stuff, then they can train the people below them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything that you would like add to the list that you would like to see on there?
not really. I mean, I can't really think of any.
Yeah. We kind of talked about it too with like just like making it fun and like recognizing like the employees for their good behavior. We kind of already brought that up.
Yeah. Well, and I think that really goes under the safety recognition program awards based on performance and improvement.
Yeah.
Make it fun.
Make
it
it
says.
Make it fun.
Make it fun, guys. Get some fun dip in there. Turn everybody's mouths bright blue.
Oh, okay. Fun dip.
So for like the last question, it talks about once again like the people and the culture of Mission Valley. So what's a way to like get the whole Mission Valley to to change kind of their attitude and culture, and like are there like any opportunities for them to like make that change, or
I like David's idea of like the jacket, like making a tough guy jacket, or like instead of having just the plain old like hard hats where they're white, making them fun. Like you can get screen print for hard hats and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So just really making it, like it says, make it fun. But I go along with the mentality that's already there, but shift it more towards safety. Like, okay, well, yeah, you were a really tough guy. You were super safe this month. You get this really cool, like leather jacket or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think another way you can help change culture is you bring in new people in the higher up positions that are able to, who weren't there with the old culture, who are like, this is the way it's going to be, and this is the new way we're doing it. We're going to do it this way. And if you start doing it that way, have them start training people who are new, the new way will eventually kind of phase out the old culture.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I also think like focusing on the individual when you've like maybe peer evaluations and things like that, if the supervisors go over with their employees like, hey, this is important, this is what we need to do, this is something we've seen you do, I think that goes a long way too.
Well, and on top of that, like with the new personnel and stuff, in one of my old jobs, there was like a safety issue, not necessarily with me, but with some other people. But the management sat back and watched for a day, just sat there and watched everybody, and they noticed that there was this ringleader that would cause problems, and he was a big guy, like big, burly, same kind of attitude with the factory, tough guy attitude. He's gonna do what he wanted when he wanted, and they managed to persuade him to be an advocate for safety. And holy smokes, like he was like one of those big biker guys that's just like, hey, wear your helmet, kind of a thing. And so it really helped change the mentality of things, because they then had somebody who was causing maybe some issues, and not maybe even causing issues in this situation, but someone who was with that mentality, but is now fighting the fight for safety, kind of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the biggest problem with these kind of like businesses and companies is that everyone kind of thinks they're invincible until something actually happens to them. And I feel like that kind of mentality needs to change, and that it needs to be like safety needs to be implemented before something happens to that person for them to understand it.
Yeah.
I know. We'll have a big conference and everybody's required to get a paper cut. It can happen to you.
Okay, so that was kind of all the questions for this discussion. Did anyone have any like questions or anything they wanted to go over or anything else?
I'm good.
All right.
So David, did you were saying Saturday night? Did we want to give you a little bit more time than that, man? I feel bad making you work on Sunday on this.
I mean, Saturdays I have a ton of homework, and Fridays I have a ton of homework.
So you're kind of just in the water.
I'm gonna be up super late on Saturday, regardless.
Well, we'll all try to
Sunday.
get it in as soon as possible.
I'll say I just mean at any point in time, if it takes you till late Saturday, it's okay. Just don't give it to me like Sunday at like 8 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm gonna try and have mine.
If you guys get it done sooner, I'm not gonna complain. But
Cool.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm gonna try and have mine done, banged out tomorrow. I don't have work tomorrow, so it'll be easy enough for me to sit down and do some homework. So. Cool.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks.
All right. See ya.
Yeah, have a
See you
good
guys
night.
later.